Hey everybody, Jim here. Well, we're here to celebrate this time of year that our planet has once again made a full rotation around the sun. That means that 2018 is now upon us. And as typical this time of year, we look back at the past 365 days during our solar rotation and think about all the cool things that have happened in that period of time. Since this is a movie review channel, I tend to focus here on my favorite movies that came out over that period. And that's what I will be doing today once again. Today we will be looking over the top 10 best movies, in my opinion, of 2017. As usual, I have not seen every movie that has come out in 2017, thanks to me just not having the time. So there might be some movies that belong on this list, but didn't make it to this list because I haven't seen them because I did not have the time. But I have seen quite a few movies this year, and many of them I highly enjoyed. So, without further ado, here are my personal top 10 favorite movies that I saw in 2017. Number 10, Thor Ragnarok. You know, it is possible that I could rank Thor Ragnarok the most fun movie of 2017, and I definitely rank this movie as the best of the Thor movies. Thor: The Dark World from 2013, definitely one of the weaker entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Thor Ragnarok is definitely quite an improvement over that movie. Even though it is the most fun, I wouldn't call it the best. It a little bit overdoes its humor. There are a lot of times where I think the movie should take itself a bit more seriously with its massive stakes, but goes for more humorous, jokey kind of feel to it, which is a little bit of a problem. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't having an absolute blast while I was watching this movie. You get the Hulk fighting a giant wolf. You get Cate Blanchett as this really awesome female villain who just seems to be hamming it up on screen. Alright, she's tons of fun to watch. Fun's a word you can use a lot in this movie. You get a whole Planet Hulk storyline. Alright, of Thor versus the Hulk again. There's just so many awesome things this movie does. Alright, it kind of has a very Guardians of the Galaxy-esque feel, which also kind of had a galaxy-hopping, space adventure comedy kind of thing to it. If you're really just looking for a really sweet, effects-filled time at the movies, you'll get a kick out of Thor Ragnarok. It's not the most brilliant or thoughtful movie released this year, certainly not the best most thoughtful Marvel movie, but I had a blast with it, and so will every Marvel fan. And given how Marvel's movies always seem to make big bank, Disney seems to be on a roll making movies that genuinely entertain audiences. I can't wait for the next one. Number 9, Spider-Man: Homecoming. Well, here we are. 5 years ago, a Spider-Man movie set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe just seemed kind of like a fanboy dream, kind of something that everyone wants, but just ain't gonna happen. That's just not how things work. The rights are with a different studio. Whatever, enjoy the Andrew Garfield movies. Well, 2017, we finally got a Spider-Man movie in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And on top of it being in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it was actually pretty damn good. It was probably the best Spider-Man movie since 2004. Easily the best Spider-Man movie since 2004. And while, as a movie on its own, it's not quite as good as the first two Raimi Spider-Man movies, as a representation of this character, what Spider-Man was originally meant to be, this movie is probably the closest we have ever gotten to a proper representation of Spider-Man. While this isn't my favorite Spider-Man movie, it is my favorite version of Spider-Man ever in a movie. The Tom Holland version really does feel like what this character was always meant to be. Kind of a nerdy high school kid who has all these problems in his life and tries to balance being a superhero with his usual everyday real-world problems and having things often blow up in his face. And at the end of this movie, not everything's resolved. Like, his usual teenage problems are genuinely fucked over and nothing comes to fix them from his superhero work. And I actually really appreciated that. It would have been such a Hollywood cliche kind kind of like at the end of The Amazing Spider-Man. Don't make promises you can't keep, but those are the best kind. That's kind of like the biggest douchebag line in any superhero movie right there. Robert Downey Jr.'s in it, but he's kind of pushed in the background enough that this movie genuinely does feel like it's giving Spider-Man the limelight, this new Marvel Cinematic Universe version of Spider-Man. And what really is great about it really is a genuinely good high school movie. These feel like real teenage situations. They were going for kind of a John Hughes feel, and they even play briefly, I think a scene out of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. A little bit too blatant with the connection. We got Michael Keaton as a villain, really awesome. So yeah, I really like this version of Spider-Man. I really hope Sony doesn't eventually fuck it up and pull Spider-Man out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kind of worried about that, but for now, and for its sequel, and we're getting him in the Avengers movie as well, I'm really liking the future of Spider-Man, and I really like this movie. Number 8, Wonder Woman. Well, this is one I've already talked about in a Quick Thoughts video earlier this year, and my overall opinion of this movie hasn't really changed much. A really, really good movie, and even comparing to the recent Justice League movie that just came out that was kind of a bit of a follow-up to it, I would definitely say it's overall a superior experience, even though it had less than half the budget. And supposedly it made even more money than Justice League did, again, with half the budget, so it was more profitable. As I said before, this is by far, not even close, the best superhero movie with a female main lead. Alright, its magical and mystical elements were integrated very well into its contemporary World War I setting. Alright, there is some visually gorgeous moments. Gal Gadot was fantastic as the character, and even though I thought the end was a little bit of a cop-out, like it was building towards something smarter, and the end didn't quite add up as well as it could have, I overall still thought this was an excellent superhero movie, which is more than you can say for almost any other movie in the DC cinematic universe. I'm really hoping they're able to fix things with the DC Cinematic Universe. Things haven't really been going too well after Justice League's underperformance. We got the new Aquaman. Supposedly Ben Affleck might be bowing out as Batman, which I don't think that'd be a good thing, because I've overall liked his performance as the character. But I think someone else could also do a perfectly good job as well. I'm hopeful for the future of this, and this was still a damn good entry. Number 7, Star Wars: The Last Jedi. Oh boy, the level of controversy that this movie caused. The divisiveness, the vastly different opinions that I've heard about it from so many different people. And I can kind of see why. Particularly after this movie came out, that there really was no grand plan for this new Star Wars trilogy. Disney's pretty much been making it up as they go along. That is kind of a shame. The movie attempts to answer some of the questions that were left open by The Force Awakens, and those answers left some people disappointed. I personally liked the direction, mild spoilers ahead, of the way this movie decided to answer them, because it genuinely seemed to be trying to surprise you. And that is something very unique for a Star Wars movie. The first Star Wars movie in my lifetime that genuinely seemed like it was trying to do that. I wasn't born when the original trilogy first premiered. The prequels, and Rogue One is included in this because Rogue One is a prequel, all were building up to the earlier released movies, so they didn't really leave you many surprises. And then The Force Awakens, of course, pretty much was a remake of A New Hope. While The Last Jedi certainly does borrow certain elements from The Empire Strikes Back, it is not a remake of The Empire Strikes Back. Its story is very, very different, and I really consider that a good thing. Mark Hamill, some people really thought this version of Luke Skywalker was a letdown, because he's a very, very different character than the way we left him as. Many planned over the last 3.5 decades or so that Luke Skywalker would come back and be more triumphant, to be like a successful Jedi Master. So this kind of more reluctant, gruff version of Luke Skywalker kind of turns some people off. Looking back on it, I really think it was necessary for these characters to grow. This is well over 3 decades since Return of the Jedi, and it makes sense that he would be a very different character. I think a problem way too many sequels have, this is from franchises all across the board, is many of them fail because they try to recapture what people liked about the original rather than trying to evolve and do new things with these characters or this world. This movie felt like it was genuinely trying to build to something new and grand. And it had some really intense action sequences. The middle kind of dragged a bit, and there was this one really shitty, stupid moment. I think you know what I'm talking about, where Finn's about to heroically sacrifice himself, and then some bullshit happens that stops him, complete with some pretentious dialogue about, we have to say the ones we love, not become what we hate, or would. That scene was dumb, really, looking back on it, but the positives really outweighed the negatives for me, and Mark Hamill's final performance, no, it won't really be his final performance. I'm sure we'll see some iterations of this character again, as Luke Skywalker really does feel like a really intense ending for this character, like a proper ending for this character, and he really gave the performance of his entire career. He really is a remarkably talented actor. He's done some fantastic voice work over the years, and this is his premiere live-action role. This is his most famous part. This is the role that made him a star, and he really goes out with a bang, I think, with this character. Because of that, I really think Star Wars The Last Jedi is a very worthy entry to the Star Wars universe, and in my opinion, the best Star Wars movie since The Empire Strikes Back. There, I said it. Number 6, Blade Runner 2049. You know, after this movie and Sicario, Denis Villeneuve really is becoming one of my favorite directors. I absolutely cannot wait to see this guy tackle Dune, after just how amazingly awesome this guy was able to not reboot. That's not, I guess you could say reboot, even though this film is a direct sequel to the 1982 original Blade Runner. It kind of does reboot it in the sense that it brings it up to a new generation. Obviously, the original came out well before I was born, probably before most of the audience were born. Many might not be familiar with the movie. And what I really like about this movie is, unlike something like, say, Jurassic World or Star Wars The Force Awakens, this is not something that seems to exist to pander to nostalgia for the first Blade Runner. Well, the first Blade Runner is well beloved, it's well considered a classic. Ironic that it took this long, 35 friggin' years to get a sequel, but it's finally here, and what is there to say about this movie? It's incredibly stunning to look at. The cinematography is absolutely gorgeous. This desolated world, that I would say, and it expands on many of the themes of the first Blade Runner movie. Based on a Philip K. Dick book called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, it kind of explores themes on what it means to be human, alright, the rise of artificial intelligences, and those themes are expanded upon in this movie. Ryan Gosling's performance, Harrison Ford is excellent. Harrison Ford returns as his character, kind of similar to the way he returns as Han Solo, I guess. Kind of picking up parts that he hasn't played in several decades. It seems like a more natural extension of this way this character left off. This is a very different character, not nearly as heroic as Han Solo. I know Han Solo kind of had a scoundrel quality, but he quickly becomes heroic. Decker, on the other hand, not so much. He definitely did very morally questionable things in the first Blade Runner. He's very much an extension of that character, as you don't know where he is quite on a moral level. Overall, the twists and turns of this movie's plot, the way it sets up a plot that you think it's going to go one way, and then kind of pulls the rug on that in the later half, and I'm not going to really spoil the twist here, but it's one that was really well set up early in the movie that you really kind of should have seen coming, but you don't, because you expect it to follow a more inevitable conclusion of a Hollywood picture. Just, you got mystery elements, fantastic performances, gorgeous cinematography, great sci-fi themes. Blade Runner 2049 really is an excellent movie. It's an excellent science fiction sequel. It lived up perfectly to the first Blade Runner. It's better than the first Blade Runner. And everyone really should check out Blade Runner 2049. Number 5, Stephen King's It. Another one I've talked about earlier in a Quick Thoughts video, but yeah, it's by far the best horror movie of 2017. It's one of the best horror movies I've seen in many years, period. It may possibly be one of the best horror movies ever made. Alright, Bill Skarsgård was fantastic as Pennywise. The effects were really chilling. The child actors' performances were all downright fantastic. And there's just lots and lots of really good, terrifying moments in this movie. This is just a really good scare, really good adaptation of Stephen King. It fits with the themes of the book, of the kind of darker side of middle America that he was going for, mixed with, obviously, supernatural stuff. What's there to say? Stephen King's it. If you're into horror movies, you will absolutely love this movie. Obviously, the pseudo-dark, surreal imagery in it is not for everybody, but for me, awesome. Number 4, Koko. Koko is easily Pixar's best movie since Inside Out. Koko is an emotionally touching picture. The plot manages to take us plot lines that are oftentimes just cliche and annoying in most other movies and make them really interesting and inventive. The characters are really likable and relatable. The visuals are absolutely stunning, some of the best I've ever seen in an animated movie. Koko is just an amazing movie. There's really nothing else to say. Pixar really went back to top form with this. So many of Pixar's latest movies have been sequels, just kind of annoying lately, because throughout the 2000s they stuck pretty much exclusively to original new stories each time. With Koko, you really get back to that. This feels like a great original movie from the 2000s, except done with even better modern animation. Koko works. That everyone should watch it, whether you're 99, doesn't matter. Koko's amazing. Number 3, Logan. Since the last time I talked about Logan all the way back in February, a few things have changed in the movie industry. Big thing was that Fox is now owned by Disney, and thus the rights to X-Men are now owned, presumably, by Marvel Studios. Which means it seems unlikely that we'll get a movie like Logan for a long time. Marvel Studios has never made a movie like Logan, an R-rated, gritty, kind of realistic movie. They prefer movies that have basically one computer animated thing punching another computer animated thing, which is fine on the occasion. There's entertainment value in movies like that. I'm sure that's what the next Avengers movie will be. But a movie like Logan that feels hard, gritty, adult is so welcome, because it is so different from every other superhero movie. And that's why this is easily my favorite superhero movie of 2017. One of my favorites ever. Possibly my favorite superhero movie since The Dark Knight. Logan is just a really fantastic movie. Not just because it's gritty and bloody, but because it has a real heart to it. Like, this is a fantastic character study on these various characters. And it puts them in a situation and makes them feel different than the way they were when we first met them, all the way back in the year 2000. And that's really a good thing. You kind of see them old, bittered, and gruff, and then they go on basically a very Tarantino-style journey, you could say, all ending with a fantastic emotional climax. It looks like the X-Men series will probably be rebooted in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I look forward to that. I'm sure the MCU could do good things with them. But for now, Logan will always be an incredibly special movie. If you haven't seen Logan, you're really missing out. Check this movie out. Number 2, War for the Planet of the Apes. This new Planet of the Apes trilogy might be the best trilogy of movies released in the past decade. What is there to say? Rise of the Planet of the Apes was a really, really good movie. Dawn of the Planet of the Apes was somehow even better. And now War for the Planet of the Apes might possibly be the best of the bunch. This movie's dark, intense, dramatic, has fantastic CGI work, with computer-animated apes that look shockingly close to the real thing at sometimes. Andy Serkis gives an amazing performance as Caesar. Working behind all that motion capture really captures how great his performance is. He's just a fantastic actor, whether he's acting with motion capture or not. He'll say he's the best motion capture performer ever. No, he's just a good actor, and the motion capture really is kind of a substitute for putting an actor through lots of makeup, basically. It's just a new way of allowing the actor to act as something that isn't themselves. In this case, an intelligent, evolved chimpanzee. Woody Harrelson was really awesome as the villain, and I like that the villain's motivation is kind of complex. I mean, he's definitely a bad guy, definitely a broken man, but at the same time, he has a motivation that is somewhat relatable. With humanity on the brink, and he sees what he's doing as something for the greater good of his people. And that draws him into conflict with Caesar, who also wants to do the best for his people, the apes. This is just a really fantastic science fiction story. This new Planet of the Apes trilogy, it's not just better technically than the original Planet of the Apes movies, it's better in every way, shape, and form. Better acted, better story. This is our example of, I wouldn't call it a remake, because this isn't really a remake. It kind of just readapts a similar concept and borrows certain elements, but I think it's a better telling of this concept than what we got way back when. War for the Planet of the Apes is a great science fiction movie. Everyone should check it out. Now, before I give my pick for the best movie of 2017, here are a few movies that weren't quite in the top 10 material, but were all movies I highly enjoyed and think everyone should check out. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. Like the first Guardians of the Galaxy, it's an incredibly visually interesting and fun sci-fi adventure with really likable characters, really good comedy, and just an all-around enjoyable entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Even if nothing about this movie is particularly brilliant or special, it does give you a more effective villain than the first movie got, and all around, I can't imagine anyone who was a fan of the first Guardians of the Galaxy not also enjoying this entry. Dunkirk. Yes, it's kind of unbelievable to me that a Chris Nolan movie released this year didn't make it in my top 10. I would probably say that Dunkirk was Christopher Nolan's weakest movie, but despite that, I still think it's a notable movie to watch. It lacks a central narrative and a central character that kind of makes it a little bit difficult to relate to, and the fact that it's a PG-13 World War II movie is a massively huge blunder. Alright, having all these war scenes and not having any blood just comes across as almost borderline cartoony. That's just not how it really was. That being said, it has absolutely stunning cinematography, and kind of similar to a movie like Gravity, it just kind of feels like an experience. Like this movie was made to make you feel like you're in this historical moment. And for that, it really is a film that is worth checking out, even if it's not quite the World War II masterpiece I was hoping for. Lego Batman. Lego Batman was not quite as good as the Lego movie that preceded it. Yet, I can't really imagine too many Batman fans or fans of the first Lego movie not liking this flick. It's fast, it's funny, it's colorful, and throughout this movie there are some genuinely really good jokes, really great moments. Overall, this is a really fun family flick. It's a movie you can show your kids, obviously. That's who it's made for most. But also one that adults can watch and get a kick out of. Nothing really that amazing about it, but an enjoyable movie nonetheless. Alien: The Covenant. While Alien: The Covenant was certainly not the best entry in this franchise, and it certainly did not provide very satisfactory answers to a lot of the questions Prometheus raised, as far as a follow-up to Prometheus goes, this was pretty good. It probably features some of the best horror scenes involving the xenomorph alien in any movie in 30 years. We have had so many disappointing entries involving this monster over the last few decades, pretty much my entire lifetime, that seeing it used this well was a bit of a breath of fresh air. Even though I don't think this movie is any kind of classic or anything like that, it definitely felt like it captured the feel of the original Alien better than any movie has in a long time. Alright, the creature effects were really stunning at times. Some of the horror scenes were genuinely pretty chilling with its use of modern special effects. So, Alien: The Covenant, if you're into sci-fi horror, this is a decent entry. And now, let me reveal my pick for the best movie of 2017. My number one favorite movie of 2017 is A Monster Calls. What is it in a movie, or not just a movie, any piece of art, that you would regard as the most important thing about it? And I would say that's the ability to move the audience in some way, whether it's to make them think, make them laugh, put them on the edge of their seat, or really drive something very unique about the human experience into their hearts. And for that, A Monster Calls is without a doubt a movie that does that. A Monster Calls is truly a masterpiece. A Monster Calls is a story of a kid named Connor O'Malley whose mother is dying of cancer. And he gets visits by a monster, kind of a giant Groot, hence the joke at the beginning of this video, who's voiced by Liam Neeson, who tells him various stories to help the kid understand his situation and go through what's happening to him. He kind of makes a point. Throughout human history, really the way mankind has really explained ideas to each other has been through telling stories. All the classic myths of Greek mythology, the Bible, what have you, are all basically there to convey certain ideas to you. And that's really what A Monster Calls does with the various stories that it tells. The various stories this monster tells to this child who's going through something like this. It's to say that stories really help convey things. And A Monster Calls is a movie that does that. The child acting in A Monster Calls is some of the best ever. I don't know who that kid who played Connor O'Malley, I don't know his name, but he really did a fantastic job of really feeling like a kid who throughout this movie is really pained by what he's going through and dealing with a mixed array of emotions, whether it's anger, frustration, or sometimes outright denial. You see all of that in his performance. Liam Neeson's vocal performance as this monster is one of the best of his career. And that's really saying something for a man like Liam Neeson, a guy who's been in Schindler's List, guy who was Aslan in the Narnia movies. But man, in A Monster Calls, he really drives home the both power of this monster, the caring of this monster. There's just so much to it. The special effects are really well done, given that this was kind of a mid-budget picture. Not low budget, but definitely not something like one of the big blockbusters get. And what's more about this, it's very rare that a movie genuinely makes me cry. But A Monster Calls had a tear run down my face. I showed this to other people. Tears. A Monster Calls is a movie that will really hit you in the heart. A Monster Calls is a movie that says something about the human experience and what we all go through, losing a loved one and everything else. And for that, A Monster Calls is a masterpiece that everyone needs to see. A Monster Calls is in a league of its own. I hear that the director of the next Jurassic Park movie is the same guy who made A Monster Calls, and for that I am extremely happy. Because given that he made such a magnificent piece, I think the Jurassic Park franchise is in very, very good hands right now. Kudos to you. Well, hope 2018 gives us more great pieces of cinema. Thank you 2017 for your awesome contributions. I'm Jim. Good night and good luck.